being typical dudes, I'm watching this with the King Bee, and we're both screaming like, do it, toilet tentacle. There's no way they're going to fucking do a toilet tentacle. The first kill of the movie is not going to be a tentacle from a giant sea monster coming up through the toilet, grabbing a little Asian woman. And then it happened.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time, decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get out of your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, I think tonight we and our listeners are in for a treat. We're going to a place we haven't been in a while. I think the last time we did a movie about cruise ships was Speed 2. And I always remember you saying, 15 knots. We're going 15 knots. So tonight, hopefully, we will be going a little faster than that. But we're going back to the open sea. We're going to go fight some monsters. And that's why I was so excited when one of our great listeners, Jeremy B., contacted us to review the 1998 ocean action horror film, Deep Rising.
Jeremy B. from Michigan wrote in and said, hello, Shat Crew. I discovered you guys randomly in mid-2021 after searching for a review of Grosse Pointe Blank and immediately fell in love with you guys and went back and re-listened to your catalog. I have to say, Ash was the perfect addition to the podcast. 2021 was a hard year for me for a variety of reasons, and it was great to find a podcast that made me feel like I was talking about movies with my friends at a time when I could not really see movies. You guys really helped me get through the year. To show my appreciation, I wanted to commission a movie. It took me a while to figure out what movie to commission. You either had done or had scheduled many of my favorite movies. Ultimately, I chose the 1998 action survival monster movie classic, Deep Rising. I did not see it in theaters, but I would most likely have seen it during one of the free Stars weekends when I was probably 15 or 16 and immediately loved it. This is not a good movie. It is a fun movie. I think the cast is charming, the monster is ridiculous, and the premise rarely makes sense. However, Treat Williams, who I'm not sure has had a major role in a movie you've reviewed yet, has a real B-movie Han Solo charm, which makes sense as he was offered the role first. This is probably one of Famke Janssen's most enjoyable roles, as she is fun, charming, and has never looked better, and the lovable loser Joey is perfectly played by Stephen Sommers' staple Kevin J. O'Connor. Is there anything more pathetic than when he drops his peanut? Overall, I think this is an over-the-top but fun movie, and I cannot wait to hear what you think of it. Sincerely, Jeremy B. from Michigan.
So a lot of times we get commission letters that are either overly optimistic or really harsh about what they expect from us. Jeremy B. might be the most fair and balanced commissioner, and his letter represents that.
I also appreciate that he discovered us in 2021. I tend to think that all of our listeners have been around since day one, and we're just doing the same shtick and the same show for a dwindling group of people. And so it just makes me feel great to know that somebody discovered us in 2021. People are still continuing to discover us, and that this podcast is attracting new listeners.
Why do you keep negging us? This is like the third podcast in a row where you talk about like we're a dying like houseplant that hasn't been watered in weeks.
Because generally when we're doing it, like, hey, I'm back for my 6th commission. I've been listening since 1992 before we even decided to do a podcast. It just, I forget that people are still discovering this, especially in the midst of the pandemic. I think it's wonderful.
Yes, I went and checked the analytics today because I was starting to feel like bad about myself. I'm like, does Gene know something I don't? I went and looked, and no, we're still growing. We're actually, I think it's about to hit 5 million for the movie, something like that, which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I stand corrected on that. It's you just get a nagging feeling, We don't see the audience. It's not like they're all in a room together, and so we're recording things and sending them out into the ether. It's good to know that the people are still out there.
You're just upset because Steve left. Steve no longer on Twitter. Steve doesn't contact us.
He just commented on Facebook about Muppet Movie.
Okay, good. You see, he's still there. They're all still
Steve.
there.
Well, Deep Rising is a 1998 ocean action horror film starring Treat Williams, Famke Janssen, and Anthony Held. It was distributed by Hollywood Pictures and Synergy Pictures, released on February 2nd, 1998, earning $11 million on a budget of $45 million. Roger Ebert, whoever that is, listed Deep Rising among his most hated films of that year. Despite the cult status Deep Rising enjoys today, it still has a low Rotten Tomatoes score, 28% from critics and 43% from audiences. So we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Tonight, it is Deep Rising. I clearly need to brush up on my nautical disaster movies because in doing this, I realized I've never seen any of the 90s and even early 2000s nautical disaster movies. Never seen Deep Blue Sea. Never seen The Meg, never seen Poseidon, never seen The Abyss or White Squall or this movie, Deep Rising. I have seen The Perfect Storm, but all I remember was there was a storm. Was Mark Wahlberg in that?
Yes, that's a true story. That's not like a disaster film. That's like a true.
I mean, the storm was a disaster.
That it was a disaster. But you haven't seen The Abyss?
No. I always get that one mixed up with Leviathan, which I have seen.
No, The Abyss is James Cameron. I think it is on our schedule. That's a legit film. Not even the original Poseidon adventure?
Nope.
Not the remake with Kurt Russell?
I did get asked to go see Poseidon when it came out in theaters, but the woman who asked me to go pronounced it Poseidon. I didn't recognize that film, and I said no because I thought it was like a foreign film.
I thought it was Poseidon Adventure. Maybe the new one was Poseidon.
No, the new one was just Poseidon.
Oh, of course. It had to be different. But for me, this film, it was right up there with the films I love. I loved action. I loved monsters, disaster movies. The more carnage, the better. I love seeing landmarks destroyed, cities in ruin. It was something I loved as a kid and growing up, probably until my late 20s when I kind of lost the taste for it. But until I started watching this, I could not remember any of it. The poster, you see him on the jet skis, jumping, there's flames. Then about 10 minutes in, it kicked. I was like, wow, I do remember seeing this. But that also revealed the fact that I did not remember it, showing this was not one of my favorites, and I kind of didn't enjoy it at the time. But going back now, with 375 movies in the can, I now feel like I am prepared to professionally dissect this film in a way I wasn't before.
Well, before we get to the trailer, the producer is telling me that I've been mispronouncing Famke Janssen's name. And Big D is a Swede. I thought you would correct me on that. But Famke Janssen, don't write in. We now know.
Yeah, I've never known anybody named Famke. And generally, I do not rely on my own ability to pronounce names. So I default to you guys as my base.
He's a Swedish scientist, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to the trailer.
At a depth of 4,000 feet, they roam harmlessly, minuscule, and unseen by human eyes. At 20,000 feet, they've been known to eat full-grown sharks. But what if those at 40,000 feet were to rise from the deep? rising.
Amidst a storm, Captain John Finnegan and his crew are hired by mercenaries Hanover, Mulligan, Mason, Billy, T-Ray, Mamuli, and Vivo to pilot their boat to an undisclosed rendezvous point. They have names. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Argonautica, a luxury cruise ship built and owned by Simon Canton, is undertaking its maiden voyage when a saboteur disables the ship's systems. A large object rises from beneath and rams the vessel, leaving it dead in the water, and the panicking passengers are attacked and slaughtered by unseen creatures. When Finnegan's boat collides with a speedboat shaken loose from the Argonautica, the mercenaries take over and reveal that they intend to rob the Argonautica before sinking it with torpedoes.
So we are currently recording this in May of 2023. We've had a recent explosion of AI. In case you're listening to this in the future, that's where we are. And this plot and these characters, it feels like future Hollywood to me in not a good way. As we're recording, also, Writers Guild of America is on strike. And one of the sticking points is the writers want to make sure that they do not build the studios a database of scripts because they fear they're going to use an AI to take existing scripts and they're going to be replaced. So they want that. The studios are not willing to do it. And this movie felt like something a basic Generation 1 AI had written. They fed it existing 80s and 90s movies, and what it spit out, the script was influenced by every other movie. The characters, the plot, the action sequences. You could feel the DNA of Jaws, The Abyss, Poseidon Adventure, Leviathan, Aliens, Predator, even Star Wars. And this movie even created like a mashup of genres. It's a heist film in a natural disaster with a monster and insurance fraud.
And now that you mention it, this movie does seem like a computer wrote it. I mean, it named characters like Trilliant St. James. It reminds me of like when the Japanese video game programmers were trying to come up with baseball player names that sounded American. You got a ship's engineer that's basically just playing into the Scooby-Doo aspect of like Shaggy on a boat in Joey. And then you got dialogue like, can you just get asthma? And a fundamental misunderstanding of the size and function of elevators. Whatever computer wrote this script had never been in an elevator, didn't understand how they worked, and that they needed power and came in different sizes.
It was also like they couldn't come up with character names. Let me give a nickname that is derivative of their personality traits. They're like the mechanic, he is Grease Monkey. The Irish guy, he is Mulligan.
Finnegan.
No, Finnegan is the pilot. Mulligan.
Oh, Mulligan, the Colin Farrell ripoff. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. All the guys have nicknames. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in there called by their proper name other than Simon Canton. A computer definitely created this.
Yeah, and everybody in this movie, minus Famke Janssen and Paul Bettany, was just a budget version of another actor the computer would have selected, right?
Amen.
You could tell Finnegan, that was supposed to be the guy, MacGyver, or that dude from Sequest, or the dude that played Lone Star on Spaceballs. Like any of those dudes could have sat in that captain's seat, but they got Treat Williams, who actually was in Empire Strikes Back as an Echo base trooper. You've got the Pawnee guy from Dances with Wolves, like the mean guy, that Colin Farrell lookalike. There's an Arsenio Hall impersonator, Bargain Nick Nolte. I understand horror movies need lots of characters for maximum body count, and they don't have unlimited budgets, but maybe trim down the cast just a little bit. You don't need all those nicknames, and afford the people you actually wanted in this movie.
I forgot one about the nicknames. Also, the Pawnee guy, all of them call him Chief.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that one. But Gene, you're in my head. I feel like we're a couple. We've been dating long enough now. We've been spending time on the couch. So I can almost hear you next to me. These thoughts are exactly what was going through my head. But I have a different take on some of the casting. So I think, yes, 100% T-Ray, that is Colin Farrell. But do you recognize him from a film we've done?
No.
He was in Mortal Kombat. He was
Kano.
Yes, he was Kano, correct. But for me, Finnegan was either Kurt Russell or Harrison Ford, which, like Jeremy B. said, was originally, this movie was written for him. And when he backed out, that's when they slashed the budget.
On what fucking planet did they think Harrison Ford would do this movie?
I mean, they were optimistic. I mean, there were so many Star Wars lines. First of all, they call his boat the hunk of junk. He even has a line where he goes, I got a bad feeling about this one. You know, they wrote this script thinking Harrison was going to fall over himself. But I want to go back to the cast here and what the computer spit out is. They're like, Harrison Ford not available. Let's go to Kurt Russell. No. Trent Williams. They also, from Mason, that's Wesley Snipes. He's even wearing like the Wesley Snipes hat. Vivo, that's Carl Weathers. Mulligan, Liam Neeson. Tucci is either Bill Paxton, because he does that, we're just totally fucked. What should I do? He's playing Paxton in Aliens, or Steve Buscemi. That's who I think that originally was. But like I said, there's mix of movies in here that I didn't know what the hell to think. It starts off like it is a military operation. We're on the water. There's some mysterious thing going on. It's going to be a military action. There's no questions asked. You pay up front and we'll take you on the mission. But they make a mistake that also The Thing did, and we complained. In the opening moments of The Thing, you see the UFO entering the atmosphere. It burns up. So when they dig something up in the ice, we know what it is. There's no, oh, wow, it's an alien. Here, the movie starts off during the credits is an underwater first person like monster cam. And we hear the monster growling. The monster's making noise. So finally, when the monster shows up, we're not surprised. We're not invested in the robbery. Everything they've been doing seems like a waste of time and distraction.
Yeah, the prologue is like, the South China Sea is so deep, anything could be down there.
Yeah,
Probably a monster, dear viewer. And as they're mishmashing these different genres, we have this subplot of the vault robbery, right? This is why these mercenaries are here. So I'm dying to know what's in the vault. I'm like, it must just be a treasure trove of all these super rich people's belongings. They get in there. It's like 6 people, totally underwhelming. There's nothing in there. And then if I'm the mercenaries and I look in there, I'm like, all right, there's not shit here. There's nobody here to rob. We just got to blow this boat up. I'm taking the first exit the fuck out of there onto the other ship. Instead, for some reason, they just go deeper and deeper into the ship. And this is before the monsters are channeling them anywhere.
No, I'm thinking about like Die Hard. When they finally crack the safe and it's like, dun, 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 and the door is open. Here, it's like opening door. It opens and there's like 3 or 4 safety deposit boxes. There's nothing in there of real consequence or value.
There's an axe for Vivo's forehead, though. That was pretty sweet.
That is a sharp axe. That thing right through the skull. Yeah.
But at this point in the movie, we still haven't seen like the monster. And in true slasher fashion, we know that something has attacked the ship, but we don't know how it kills or who it'll slaughter first. And they cut to this little Asian lady. She's running in this crowd. People are trampling each other. And she ducks into a ship's lavatory. And she's cowering on the toilet. Now, being typical dudes, I'm watching this with the King Bee. And we're both screaming like, do it, do it. Toilet tentacle. There's no way they're going to fucking do a toilet tentacle. The first kill of the movie is not going to be a tentacle from a giant sea monster coming up through the toilet, grabbing a little Asian woman. And then it happened. And for me, that's half a wipe off right there, because they had the boldness to be fun, like Jeremy was saying, and just go for it. It makes no sense at all. It yanked her through the toilet.
No, she's wearing a tiny mini skirt. And also, I want to set the scene. This is a bathroom on a cruise ship. She's in there, and there's toiletries. This looks like your home bathroom. This is not a tiny cruise bathroom. She's got a tiny skirt on, and she looks like either she has to shit, she looks like she's struggling. I thought they were going to do an alien just mash up here. And the tentacle was going to come up to her ass. She was going to wriggle and it was going to burst out of her chest. But no, they don't even give us the satisfaction. There's only the obligatory like shot of blood all over the wall. I didn't even know. Did it suck her down into the toilet?
Yeah, I thought that it like went and hooked inside her anus and then yanked her down, as impossible as that is. But it doesn't really explain how you'd fit like a skull and an entire skeleton through. I mean, the pressure must have been incredible.
I mean, imagine if you went up the anus and you grabbed, you could turn somebody inside out. And then maybe they pulled intestines. Then that led to the other major organs. And the bones were like left sitting in the toilet.
Now, this monster's got some serious panache, though, because there are people just outside in a hallway that could easily grab any one of them. But no. Kill one, it's coming up through the toilet. Well, the group boards the ship, leaving Finnegan's crew member Leela and mercenary Billy behind to repair the boat. where they are both killed by the creatures. The group reaches the ballroom only to find blood and no sign of the passengers. T-Ray goes off to investigate strange noises and is torn to shreds by the creatures. Mamuli contacts Hanover, but is dragged off by unseen creatures, forcing Finnegan and Joey to flee. They run into a woman named Trillian St. James, a passenger who is imprisoned for stealing. Meanwhile, Hanover's group reaches the vault and Vivo opens it, only to be mistakenly killed by Canton, who was hiding inside the vault along with Captain Atherton and 3 other passengers. Mason and Mulligan panic and kill the passengers. And when we say Mason and Mulligan panic and kill the passengers, what we mean is they exhibit terrible trigger discipline, which they've been doing throughout the movie, and they're just blasting away with their machine guns. And I think that Deep Rising was trying to introduce one of these iconic weapons that we get through the 80s and 90s movies. And of all the ridiculous weapons we've seen on Shat The Movies, I thought Crawl had the most ridiculous with the glaive. Deep Rising may have unseated the glaive because we've got the M1L1 triple pulse rifle. If you haven't seen this thing, it's got 5 rotating barrels that feed off a 1,000 round magazine. And if my math is correct, and this thing is in fact firing 5.56 rounds, which is what we see the shells that are falling in the movie, 1,000 rounds is 26 pounds of ammunition. And then they've got these like giant flashlights on the thing, plus the weapon itself. I would imagine each of these rifles weighed minimum 30 pounds. Like that's heavier than an M60. And I don't think I saw a single person carrying extra mags, whatever a 1,000 round mag would even look like.
Forget, there's no drum. There's no belt. I carried the 240 Bravo in the Army. You can't hide those rounds. They reload maybe once, but I can't tell what they're doing. But they called it a pulse rifle because it's aliens. It's so iconic, the computer had to include that into this. And you also mentioned here that one of our characters gets whacked real quick. It's Vivo. Vivo gets the axe to the head. That is Oscar nominee Blood Diamond and Amistad actor Jaman Hosi. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Listen, I couldn't even get Famke Janssen, so don't ask me.
Well, you know who he is. He's the Blood Diamond guy. He's in this for a couple minutes. He's the one actor that the AI predicted would become somebody big. But this movie, you got to realize at this point, is going to be over the top. It is a sledgehammer of destruction. The weapons, Gene, you're talking about, could we let them have normal weapons? No, it's got to be some new cutting edge shit. They got torpedoes with LED screens that say armed. All of their shit is like custom. Everything is over the top. The monster is big. The destructive power is just OP. There's dozens of torpedoes. And I mean, this torpedo is strong enough. If it hits a cruise ship, just one torpedo, it doesn't just put a hole. It blows up every single level, extending from front to back of the ship. This would take down an aircraft carrier in a second. 2 boats collide in the open sea. Giant fireball. The hull of this ship is just ripped open and exploded. That's a World War II vintage U.S. Navy PT boat. This thing is meant for combat. There is no restraint. And this is the perfect example of how they just went balls to the wall with everything. Hercules and Jezebel, that's the nickname for the engines on the PT boat, Finnegan's boat. In this explosion, they are devastated. We got Grease Monkeys out there, and he says, the heads are ruined, and all the bores are destroyed, and the camshaft is out here on the floor. But yet 2 minutes later, they've got one component the size of a water bottle in a backpack. They're going to go onto the ship, and they're going to fix it. The engine was in pieces. This movie could not help itself.
I'm glad you pointed out that the PT boat was ready for combat, because I was seriously concerned when watching this movie. I'm like, I'm never getting on a boat again. If this is what happens when 2 boats collide at sea, this is terrifying. So of course I start Googling, like, how likely is it that I'm on a boat and we hit another boat? Is it something that happens every day? Turns out collisions between ships are pretty rare because, and this is just, listen, I'm from Arizona. I didn't know this. There's a lot of ocean.
Lots.
And relative to the ocean, ships are very, very small. So unless you're in like a congested shipping channel, it's very unlucky that you'd be hitting a boat. So the chances of Finnegan's ship, the hunk of junk, hitting that speedboat are pretty low. And if it did hit it, it's not going to be that catastrophic fireball that we saw on screen.
No, but it's not even just a hunk of junk. Of course, this thing has to be OP also. Yes. We've got these all digital displays. We've got sensors. This is over the top, cutting edge. and then he's on there playing like poker or blackjack on it. You would expect, if this thing can't handle a tiny ass speedboat, I mean, this isn't a cigarette boat, people. This is like a small boat that you would take in between the ship and land, and it just almost destroys the ship.
Yeah, I mean, he might have avoided it if there weren't mercenaries sitting in front of the windows while he was trying to steer. But while Finnegan is fucking around playing poker, we've got this other character, arguably like the coolest character in the movie, Layla. And she's the best looking person in the cast. She's the most interesting character. She's kind of like this tough chick. They call her Muscle Girl or whatever. And she is also the most mistreated member of Finnegan's crew. The AI that wrote this movie fucking hated Asian women, apparently, because one gets pulled through a toilet. And then the other one, Layla, she gets left alone with an armed mercenary. She's the one they decided to leave behind, not Joey, Layla. And what do they give her to repair a hull breach the size of a fucking Mazda Miata? A cutting torch. Nobody checks in on her for a full hour. So while Finnegan and Joey are off cracking jokes and being on the cruise ship, she is by herself. She's dead. Nobody knows it. Joey doesn't radio. When he gets back to the ship, he's checking on the ship. He's checking on Finnegan. It takes like 10 minutes before he's like, oh, hey, is Layla gone? Yeah, she's dead, motherfucker. That's your girlfriend.
Dude, also, why would you make... So for people who don't know, Kevin J. O'Connor, he is a slightly more handsome Steve Buscemi. He does not look like he should be getting a girl like Layla. But whatever. You know, the AI hates Asian women, so they're together. The mercenaries all threaten to rape her. She's now been left alone on the ship. He doesn't, I hope she's okay. Oh, well, I wonder what's going on with Layla. It's not like, is she down there getting raped by these mercenaries? He doesn't give two shits. But at least, Gene, for everything that the AI wrote in the script, at least when they make her get naked, the only person, they crop it right above the nipples. So I thought the subtitles was blocking her nipples. So I had to pause it, turn off subtitles, rewind. It's integrity. I want to make sure I didn't come on here and just put my foot in my mouth.
Did you notice when she was repairing the ship that Rodney Dangerfield's body went floating by? That was a little creepy.
I did, but I kept noticing she was using the cutting torch to heat up a piece of metal that every 5 seconds the ship would dip below the cold ocean water. So she'd heat it up. It would go, tss, heat it up, tss, heat it up. Tss. What is she doing?
I mean, listen, if I was left alone with an armed mercenary, I'd be like, wow, I'm really busy fixing this hole in the ship that I can't stop fixing. So you leave me the fuck alone. She's being smart is what she was doing. Well, Canton and Atherton explained that the ship has been attacked by unknown creatures that killed everyone else on board. Canton is found to be the saboteur, having hired the mercenaries to sink the ship so he could collect on the insurance. The group is attacked by creatures resembling giant spike-covered tentacles, which eat Atherton. Canton theorizes that the creatures are an extreme evolution of the Atoya, which drain their victims and eject their carcasses. The survivors flee, but Mason is grabbed by a creature and kills himself by detonating a grenade. Mulligan elects to stay behind in the crew's galley until a rescue party can arrive. There, he is ambushed and devoured by the creatures.
So I'm becoming more and more confident that this is either bad writers or we have identified the weakness of AI. AI does not understand how insurance works. They understand the concept of it. You know, people pay money into it. So if something bad happens, they can recoup their loss. But this is an unrealistic scenario. In a movie that has monsters and giant explosions, this insurance fraud is the most ridiculous plot point. This isn't how it works. If this ship sinks, you're trying to claim this cruise ship, it's brand new. There's going to be an investigation. This is going to be worldwide news. This is going to be the Consta Concordia. This isn't just going to be like, oh, okay, we'll cut you a check. Here's $482 million. He put 3 disks into the computer on this attack that will melt the system to the core. He then leaves them in the ship. He thinks it's going to explode the ship with a torpedo or just blow it up with this super-powered torpedo. They don't even think, let's try to blame this on a military action. Maybe it was, the Chinese or the North Koreans. There's better ways to sink a ship and get insurance paid. It's the middle of a damn storm. Go down to one of the bottom levels, open up a port, open up the door where the jet skis are, make it look like an accident, or even just sail close to one of those Italian islands like Giglio.
Yeah. Also, why do it while it's fully populated? over the South China Sea. Like now you've got hundreds of witnesses to an international incident. You also got to pay out those fucking families. Like those people were on your ship. You are liable. And why would you be on board, Canton? Like, you know, the ship is going down. It's going to get blown the fuck up. Why are you even there, homie?
Gene, who's going to melt the core of the system? It's him. He's got to be on board. And you know what? This is like, maybe it's like a Hunt for Red October. You know, you see the explosion, you make the Russians think, oh, the ship is sank. But yes, he claims that nobody's going to get hurt, that they were going to put people on the lifeboats. But that nuclear torpedo would have killed everybody within a couple hundred feet.
And we should take a second to just acknowledge the fact that there is no explanation at all at any point in this movie why the night that Canton decided to sabotage his own ship and have mercenaries come blow it up and rob the vault, a sea creature decided to attack it. It's not like the software that he used triggered the sea creature. It's not like he intentionally sailed over a part of the ocean. It just, that particular night, really bad timing.
Gene, not that particular night, that particular minute. The minute that the PT boat is approaching is the exact minute that the monster attacks, that he puts the CDs in. The exact moment that Trillian St. James is going in to rob the vault. It all happens that exact same minute. Why not maybe the ship makes some crazy noise, it hits a crevice that expands a hole in the ocean, lets the monster out. There's a lot of things they could have done. But this movie was tied to Harrison Ford. It had a giant budget. It was going to be a big film. It was going to be ambitious. He leaves, and they start after cutting corners. They had to film in a water tank in Vancouver because LA was too expensive. They wanted it to be alien, so they're like, okay, let's get some steam-filled, pipe-filled corridors. This will be great. Let's get everybody up to their waist in water. There'll be some water going around. We'll get some slime. There'll be monsters with teeth and bones and skeletons. But overall, I counted 5 total sets. We've got the interior of Finnegan's boat. We've got the cruise ballroom, which is used multiple times, the food storage, the jet ski bay, and then that hallway that they run back and forth. And I noticed it because I know a strange thing. There was like a fuse box on the wall that had really weird conduits running to it. They ran by this box no less than 3 times. It was the same hallway. So you could feel the cost savings, but it just came across to me as cheap.
I thought they did an okay job making the ship seem big. Like I could feel the scale of it. I didn't notice that we were in the same spots again and again until the jet ski scene. I just don't understand how insistent the actors were with interacting with every part of the set. These characters were talking to engines. They were talking to lockers. They were talking to doors. They were talking to the vault. They were talking to ladders. It's an action movie. They just don't need to talk so much. I only imagine maybe it's the AI is lonely, wishing that people would talk to it. So it's like, you can talk to inanimate objects. It is okay. Famke Janssen is Dutch, not Swedish. In a running battle, the survivors find themselves being herded toward the bow of the ship, where they find a feeding ground full of bloody skeletal remains. Hey, that's set 6. Canton misleads the others.
No. Yeah, that was a clear map painting. That was like some bad CGI. That was not a set. That looked like you were playing. Do you remember the video games where you would shoot at the Terminator? It was like the Terminator.
Yeah.
You got the pulse rifle.
With
and
Aerosmith?
It was like, yes, it is. That's what this scene looked like. It looked like a bad video game. Sorry for interrupting, but I don't want you to say that was a set. That was not a set.
Looked real to me. Well, the creature breaks through the hull, flooding the lower decks and separating the survivors. Hanover wounds Joey in an attempt to slow the creatures, but Joey escapes. Joey later finds Hanover being devoured by one of the creatures. As an act of mercy, he leaves Hanover a gun, but Hanover wastes his only bullet trying to kill Joey, and he is consumed. Finnegan and Trillian return to Finnegan's boat, but find it useless as a means of escape. Joey begins improvised repairs, and Finnegan sets the boat's autopilot to crash into the Argonautica and detonate the torpedoes.
So I think today we've become so accustomed to being able to do like just video editing and some CGI work on like our home computers. It's become so simple and the software is out there. But back in the 90s, to do high quality CGI, it was expensive. It took time. And the special effects in this film took so long. They delayed the film for almost 2 years. And I thought the CGI work at the end came out, and I'm trying to cut the movie some slack, but it felt like Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It was muddy. There was no definition. And I think they missed an opportunity. Go simple. When you don't have the money or the technology, like Alien, the first one, or Jaws, when the shark looks ridiculous, hint at it. Don't show it to us. Okay, there's a fin in the water, or we get the music. Dun, 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 dun. Here, they were so excited to show us the monster right off the bat. They shouldn't. It could have been much scarier if we had to imagine it. The only practical effect to me that I was like, wow, how'd they do that? Or that was creepy is Billy. Billy gets like eaten by one of the tentacles and he is spit out. And it is this horrifying, like Gus Fring explosion in Breaking Bad where half of his head is blown off and he's like, help me. And it looked really creepy and really disturbing. And then the monster comes back and you're like, shit, this is bad.
It wasn't great, but nothing is as bad as Mortal Kombat Annihilation. This is much, much better than Mortal Kombat Annihilation. There was one scene, though, where you could tell they pushed the CGI a little too far. The Octolus, the big monster that's killing everybody, it straight up punches Finnegan. Like it makes a fist and it punches him. And that was a step too far for me. But I thought they made up for it with like the axe in Vivo's head, or like you mentioned, Billy getting, half digested. I would give them, they're middling in their special effects for the 90s.
So did you pick up on any of the continuity issues?
No, I feel like maybe I was enjoying this movie a little too much, but clearly you were on the job.
I was. And in my research afterwards, I found out, yes, like spoiler alert at the end, Grease Monkey, he was supposed to have died. The test audiences hated it. So they went back and did the surfboard survival. And I felt other points throughout the movie that I'm like, okay, is this additional editing? Because Finnegan, throughout the entire ordeal, they're going through bloody corridors, elevators falling to the ground and exploding, explosions on a ship, diesel, fuel everywhere. And this dude looks remarkably clean. His hair is always perfect. He swims 20 meters Poseidon Adventure style under the water. He gets out and he is completely dry, other than maybe a damp towelette on his forehead. Canton, who was part of like the axe murder, he's covered in blood in his white dress shirt. Miraculously, after the swim, it is dry, perfectly pressed, no blood. And this is either a lack of continuity that they just didn't care, or there were some other wild edits going on here to have it make some kind of sense.
I mean, now that you mention it, I did spot one thing. The final scene on the beach, Trillian, she's wearing like an A shirt, and it is the whitest A shirt I have ever seen. Like, I will never complain about Famke Janssen in an A shirt, but I need to get the number of her laundry guy because there isn't a speck of dust on this thing. And now she's been through explosions. She's been through the ocean, a battle with a sea creature, Canton, threatening to shoot her, spotless. Trillian locates a Sea-Doo they can use to reach the island, but an armed Canton orders Trillian to join him. Finnegan rescues Trillian just as creatures smash through the main deck and are revealed to be the tentacles of a vast deep-sea monster, the Octolus. Finnegan shoots the Octolus in the eye, and he and Trillian escape on a Sea-Doo. Canton breaks his leg jumping onto Finnegan's boat and is unable to disable the autopilot. He dies as the boat crashes into the Argonautica, destroying both ships and the Octolus. Finnegan and Trillian reach the island, where they find and reunite with Joey. As the three are catching their breath, a loud roar echoes from the jungle as something gigantic comes crashing through the trees. Okay, when the creatures first start attacking, I'm thinking, all right, this is just the thing, but it's on the water. Each tentacle has its own like overly complicated mouth. They seem to hunt independently. And we learn that the way that this thing eats is that it sucks the victim in, sucks it dry, drinks it practically, and then spits out what's left. The corridors and the pipeworks of the ship wouldn't be wide enough for a giant squid or something to navigate. So we figure these are like individual, like tentacle beings, like long worms, right? But no, it turns out the Octolus is in fact a big ass sea monster, which for some reason has central eyes and a big mouth with a bunch more teeth. This totally betrays the function of the smaller mouths and the predatory tentacles. Like, this creature does not make any sense other than to look, I guess, gnarly on screen.
physically, I could never tell how big it was. And it makes, if you've gone on a cruise ship, there is no way one giant animal, no matter how many tentacles you have, no matter how long, that you could catch people. People will scurry around the deck. People will find places to hide. And I know for me personally, I'm more scared of lots of little things. Give me, maybe they could have baby, like worm or slug type aliens that are like have the mouth and they're future generations of this being, of this Oculus, and it spits it out. They're scurrying up the walls. That's more terrifying than one thing you can avoid.
Yeah, and the octopus doesn't just have like a normal sea creature eye either. It has like a fucking giant fishbowl, a very fragile like water balloon of an eyeball that you can just shoot out with a shotgun, which again, it's a deep sea creature. Why?
Well, that's why you don't punch him. Eat him. If you don't punch him, you could fucking eat him. But Eugene, you said they're talking to everything. They're talking to the elevators, talking machines. I was expecting the monster to say something at this point. Out, stay out. Something ridiculous like that.
And Big D, you mentioned earlier that bay of sea-doos aboard the Argonautica. We see it very early in the movie when everything is pristine, when we're getting our Titanic tour of the Argonautica. The second we saw those sea-doos, I knew the personal watercraft would be playing an important role in this movie. I may have been tipped off by the movie poster as well, which looks like something that might be out of like Waterworld. Anyway, I was bracing for some like real cheeseball sea-doo stunts. I was not going to be surprised that Finnegan was going to do something cool on a sea-doo, maybe ramp something while an explosion was going on. Nothing prepared me for this fucking like Mario Kart in the hallways of a sinking cruise ship.
I don't know how big they think these corridors are, but corridors on a cruise ship are not this big. And I don't also get the fact that there's clearly at least 5 or 6 there. They're all numbered, and the corresponding keys are all up on a big board. Trillian comes in. She, for some reason, picks number 3, the yellow one. She goes over to it. Out comes Canton, who's going to shoot her with a flare gun. He doesn't even know if it's going to hurt. It'll burn her, scar her, but he thinks it's going to kill her. He chases her around the ship for the key to number 3. Dude, let her go. Take number 2, take number 4, shoot yourself out the door, and you're going to survive.
No, instead we get a scene with Finnegan doing multiple U-turns down small corridors, yet somehow he's avoiding explosions, he's avoiding the Octolus. And we get those great scenes too, where he's like driving and he's shooting the shotgun, but he needs Trillian St. James. Cock it, babe.
That was a little sexually suggestive. She's grabbing it kind of reverse palm and she's stroking it and she shoots it. But they shoot out there. We get the poster shot. It looks like, I think I could do a better one with my Photoshop. It does not even look like they attempted to do it any high resolution. And that was a strategy the movie decided to go with. They didn't have any big stars. They didn't have the budget. So in all of the posters, they were pushing the CGI and the effects. So they were, instead of being like, hey, the best action film in years, the posters said, full scream ahead from the special effects makers of Total Recall and Star Wars. They were pushing the special effects, and to me, it wasn't that good. But they had these grand ideas for this as a franchise. This was supposed to be the ending, which felt to me like Jurassic Park and Lost with the smoke monster, something you can't identify pushing through the trees. This was originally supposed to be the reboot for King Kong. This was supposed to be Skull Island. And they were hoping that this would lead to a reboot, that Stephen Sumner would be the director, but Stephen Sumner couldn't. He ended up doing The Mummy, and then King Kong went on. They did a remake a couple years later. Eventually, Peter Jackson did it. But for a movie that had these grand plans of leading into some almost like a monster universe, this film was fucking wild, people. This was wild.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I thought with the iconic weapons and the ships and all that this was going to be some sort of a series that they hoped to do, right? Where it was just like one giant creature after another. And yes, I understand that King Kong is a giant creature, but at least it's a creature with some background and some credibility. I thought that they imagined that they were going to spin out this whole universe out of Deep Rising. And that's just way too aspirational for a movie this bad.
There's an active volcano, Gene. An active volcano spewing lava on this island. I think it would be hard for somebody not to come and film it and say, hey, what's that big gorilla?
Well, now's the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score for Deep Rising. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get out of perspective. But 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is being a cowardly nerd grease monkey and getting the hottest chick in the film. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a film. It is toilet tentacles. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Deep Rising?
Man, I'm torn on this. It's fun. It's a guilty pleasure. It's a bit long. I think that's the biggest problem I have with it. You can be campy. It can be over the top. It could be a mismatch of genre. It could be the B team of actors. You could have these cookie cutter characters that we've seen before. But for me, I think it was just too much of a mess. I got to 3.75 wipes. And it's not because of a lack of effort. They seem to have had fun. From everything that I've read, about Trent Williams, he said this was fun. And I believe him. But watching it, it was maybe just one fun. So I'd say 3.75 wipes.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, Big D. I want to clarify for Jeremy that I didn't need everything in this movie to make sense. But if it's not going to make sense, it's got to be so superbly entertaining that I just don't care. Like, I'm not looking for my action flick or my slasher flick to be purely logical. I think that the problem that I had here was, as Big D astutely pointed out early in the film, is that it was trying to do too much. There were too many genres being blended into this thing, and it wasn't a parody of any of them. It was actually taking itself sort of seriously. So for that reason, I got to say that it is not terrible. Like 4 wipes would be terrible. 3 wipes is a little bit subpar. It's not doing what it could be doing. And I think that the fact that it made $11 million on a $45 million budget kind of signals that the rest of America sort of felt the same.
So, Gene, in its defense, this was supposed to come out the week of Titanic. They ended up pushing it a month and a half later, but Titanic was still number 1. So I don't think the deck was stacked against it. I don't think this movie ever had a chance.
No pun intended.
So Gene, with a wipe score of 3.75 wipes, that now ties us in the 270 spot with Labyrinth, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and Lady Hawk. It's slightly better than Ice Pirates, Last Starfighter, and GoldenEye, and slightly worse than It, Trading Places, and Jingle All the Way.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's Labyrinth without Chili Down.
Jeremy, I hope you enjoyed the podcast and accept the wipe score. I hope there's no love lost between the podcast and you. And I hope that this doesn't diminish your fun the next time you watch Deep Rising, because I definitely had a good time watching it.
Agreed.
Moving on from Deep Rising, let's get to some voicemail before we close out the episode. Our first voicemail comes from Elizabeth from Texas, calling in about A Christmas Story.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth from Early, Texas. I love y'all tremendously. I will say this, Christmas Story is a 50 wipe movie. That movie is completely another horseshit.
Yes.
It is one of the worst movies ever made, in my opinion, in my family's opinion. Like, it has become a running gag between me and my mom and my siblings, that we prank each other every Christmas with wrapping each other's gifts in the Christmas Story or buying something that is a Christmas Story as a gag gift for each other. A couple movie ideas that I think y'all would like to do is Nicolas Cage's Con Air or Johnny Depp's Crybaby. They're both really good movies. I'm not exactly sure what year each of them came out, because I really don't check that, but I know they're in that 80s, 90s area. Con Air was one of my dad's favorite movies, along with mine. Another really good one is Clint Eastwood's Heartbreak Ridge. We loved military movies because we have a lot of military veterans in my family. And when I get a chance and an opportunity to try to commission one of those movies or even a movie, I will really try. I love y'all. Y'all's podcast makes my day go by faster when I'm at work. I really appreciate everything y'all do. Y'all are amazing. The banter is amazing. And I will say this, just to keep going, don't ever stop. It brightens up a lot of people's day, especially mine. Again, I hope y'all have an amazing day, and thank you so much for everything that you do for movie enthusiasts and just in general. I love y'all. Y'all have a great day. I'm out.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. We love you too, and thank you for the very kind message. And I agree, A Christmas Story is an absolute disaster. I appreciate you agreeing with me because I find that it's such a rare opinion. I'm always the odd man out when I bring it up.
I think in 6 years, Elizabeth is the first person who has written in validating our review of A Christmas Story. We universally did not like it. We thought the style of it, it was style over substance, that it wasn't that good of a film, that people have been brainwashed into it. Oh, we should like it. So Elizabeth, thank you. And thank you for all your kind words. We're glad to be there for you, and we're glad you're there for us.
As for Con Air and Crybaby, they're both within our range. So Con Air is 1997. Crybaby came out in 1990. Both of them are very popular in my household. I would love to do those, and we would certainly accept those, along with Heartbreak Ridge, which I know Big D loves his military movies.
I would like Con Air. That's a military movie, too. His hands are deadly weapons.
It's true. Speaking of military movies, our next voicemail comes from Big Dave in Colorado.
Hey, Shat The Movies. I just found your podcast about a month ago, and I really dig it. I've been going through all the episodes. I've been sleeping. So for instance, Back to the Future 3, Edward Scissorhands, both good, help me go to sleep episodes. Not that they weren't good, but just something about the way you guys talk or whatever. I don't know if it's that ASMR thing. I'm 41. I'm old. I don't really know what these kids do, but it's been great to listen to. And I just have one kind of, I don't know, I was going to say Christmas wish, but we're a little past Christmas, but I'll leave it anyway. Gene, I love you, but if you could stop talking about junior ROTC Air Force Camp like every other episode, I just, I'd appreciate that, man. I'm hoping we can crowdsource some kind of blue ribbon of participation for you, like the internet. We can get you a trophy or a participation award. Cool, man. Awesome. And I know you played Top Gun on Nintendo. You could land on the aircraft carrier. You couldn't get the fuel line, but look, I have no doubt that you've Googled a lot of information. But when it comes to military, I guess, advice or knowledge for the show, Big D is kind of the guy. So I'm really sorry, Gene. I just had to have a moment of honesty with you guys. So love you guys.
Well, if you were hoping to get ASMR in this response, Dave, you're not going to get it. But, I think it's a bit of a double standard here, because nobody comes at Big D when he claims to have goth cred, when he talks about how he listened to all those bands in the 80s. Nobody goes after him just because he didn't serve in the goth corps.
I think also it depends on which episode you listen to. Because I don't think you talk, if it's a movie about taps, or if it's military, you'll bring it up, whatever, but it's something that's relevant to you. I think if you get a certain mix of films, it might seem like you did that. If you get certain group of films, it might seem like I was pretending to be goth.
No, but I do agree with Dave on this. Sometimes it's okay to retire a joke if nobody's laughing. So the whole Air Force Junior ROTC thing has been kind of like a running gag, in which Big D will talk about his actual military service, and then I'll talk about my service as a cadet in the Air Force Junior ROTC. I'm getting the sense that maybe nobody's laughing at the joke, and therefore it's not a funny joke. So Dave, my pledge to you is I will stop talking about Air Force Junior ROTC, even though I will wear my uniform on future podcasts, and you just won't be able to see it.
Well, I took it as that you really wanted to do it. It was something that you were genuinely
with all my heart. Yeah.
The only thing I have a problem with is that you wore a scarf. That
was an ascot.
Yeah, that you wore that was a problem. But I think you came from a place that you genuinely wanted to serve, and it was an experience that shaped you into who you are. So I don't mind you talking about it. I hate talking about the military because I don't want somebody to be like, oh, you think you're the shit. I don't. I don't know anything. It was my small window in the military. It is not something that I can expand to all military service or everyone's experiences.
Did you ever wear a cordon or an officer's cap?
No.
Yeah. So, I don't want to hear it from you, Big D. You don't know what it feels like. You would be talking about if you'd ever worn a cordon or an officer's cap.
Oh, maybe when I come over, we can cosplay.
Yeah. Make Big Dave some videos.
Oh, personal videos. I like it.
Balls.
It'll be like Cameo. We'll make some personal shout outs to him.
No, but Big Dave, thank you so much for your voicemail. And I promise I won't talk about Air Force Junior ROTC ever again. Only the diehards will ever know my service to this country.
No, so now I'm going to be forced to ask you questions. So, Gene, when you were in junior ROTC, did you experience this? I'm going to prompt you. You shouldn't have said you're going to cancel this. I'm going to bring it out of you.
And when the podcast needs knowledge about particular aircraft, I have this whole database in my head that I just won't be able to share. I won't be able to talk about the P-51.
What a waste.
Finally, we have a voicemail from Chris from New Jersey calling in about Outside Providence.
Hey, Shat Crew, how you doing? This is Chris from New Jersey, and I just wanted to chime in on your Outside Providence episode. I basically wanted to just say that I saw this movie in the theater before it was released at a special test screening. And I can tell you that when I went to go see it again after it was released, there was a lot of things that were changed. And the gist of the changes, one of them was that I guess the response to Alec Baldwin's initial take on the character was pretty negative. He really came across as a real asshole, obviously, and really did not have any kind of likability. I remember his performance. I actually thought it was much better than in the released version. He never had that scene at the end. Like you guys had said, that it felt like the graduation scene at the end when he came to see his son at the graduation. He said it seemed like an add-on. Well, it was. That was not in the original version. That was a reshoot where he's all dressed up with a tie and he's expressing emotions and trying to be, friendly and nice to his son. That wasn't in the original version. They toned it big time down. I don't even recall him showing up at the end at the graduation. I feel like nobody showed up. And then the next time we see him was when he came back home after graduation and his dad never showed up. I believe that was added. If I'm not mistaken. I'm about 95% sure that he was never there. I mean, it's been some time, obviously. I think I saw this movie once in the theater years ago with the release and once with the pre-release screening. And I'm pretty positive that he was never there. But I do remember they toned down his character quite a bit. And I believe, if memory serves, and forgive me if I'm completely off base here, because I haven't seen this film since it was released, but I don't remember. I think Drugs is in the whole movie. In the original version, I'm pretty sure Drugs died, and he got a letter at school saying that I think he overdosed on drugs or he was in a car accident. It was one of the two. So the fragmented nature of the release version of the film that you guys picked up on, yeah, that movie definitely was thrown together. The shoot was severely altered between shooting ending and post-production and screenings and then reshoots. Yeah, that movie suffered quite a bit between the initial production and the release. And unfortunately, a lot of the performances suffered. Now, not that it was a great movie to begin with, but I remember enjoying it a lot more initially than when I saw the released final version. So just to reiterate your suspicions, and they definitely were true because I specifically remember it being very different. Anyway, keep doing what you're doing, guys. I love the show as always. I discovered you on a whim a couple of years ago, and now I've been listening for a while, so I really enjoy your podcast. So keep up the good work.
Okay, Chris, thank you for calling in. In the version that we reviewed, Drugs does die because they all go to the funeral. That's kind of what spurs his change. But what you're saying makes complete sense because our complaint was the tone. Alec Baldwin went from being like, hey, come here, dildo, heh, 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 like laughing to then making his son hitchhike back to school, being an abusive drunk asshole who led his wife to kill herself. She was mentally ill. So it makes sense now that it was a darker side, that he was overcoming something. His dad wasn't bipolar and like jokey one minute and then just dark and abusive. He was an asshole the whole movie, and I think they should have left it that way.
I know it's going to sound really hypocritical since I just told Big Dave that I wouldn't talk about ROTC because he told me that he didn't enjoy when I talked about ROTC. But can you imagine putting a movie together? You're a director. You film it. There's a screenwriter who wrote the damn thing. People put their hearts into acting it out on screen. And then they show it to they screen it for an audience. They're like, we didn't like that. And then they're like, all right, change it up. Studio just says, change it up. Change the story. I'd be so insulted. I'd just walk out. I probably would. If I was getting paid, I'd be like, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, but I think I have more respect now for Alec Baldwin's performance.
Right.
Because we made fun of him crying in that moment where he broke down. I'll bet you if he was dark and abusive the whole time, and this was the first time that he showed emotion, we would have been like, oh, that was powerful. Instead of us mocking him. Yeah.
We're sorry, Alec Baldwin. We're sorry for everything.
We're sorry. Hope 2024 is better for you.
All right. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can always go to shatpod.com and use the SpeakPipe feature. We appreciate everybody's voicemail that they've sent in. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
So, Gene, most of our commissions right now, we're queued up well into 2024. The movies that's coming up next week was commissioned a year ago, so we're far off. And when they come in, there seems to be no rhyme or reason. The sequence they come in, the order. Now, I'm starting to see a pattern here, Gene. We had Mermaid and Small Vagina. We had last week. This week, we had Sea Monsters.
And Big Vagina.
Big Vaginas. And we talked about one of the inspirations for this film that we just did, Deep Rising. It just happens to come up next week. And next week, we will be doing a film when a young woman is killed by a shark while skinny dipping near the New England tourist town of Amity Island. Police Chief Martin Brody wants to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry overrules him, fearing that the loss of tourist revenue will cripple the town. Ichthyologist Matt Hooper and grizzled sea captain Quint offer to help Brody capture the killer beast, and the trio engage in an epic battle of man versus nature. Commissioned by Tracy C. This came out in 1975, and I remember my parents taking me to a release of it a couple years later, and it terrified me. I was afraid of the ocean for years. And this is a legitimate blockbuster. This is a movie that Shat the Movies is not complete without reviewing.
I think this movie kept most of Gen X out of the water for a very, very, very long time. I mean, I grew up in Arizona and I was afraid of going in the water because of this movie.
And again, we talked about how kids are never the victims in these films. When you're terrorizing and targeting children, I think it's a different level of terror than watching adults get butchered. When it's a kid, you can feel it.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for the upcoming commission. Thank you, Jeremy, for commissioning Deep Rising. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. And wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws. This is Universal's extraordinary motion picture version of Peter Benchley's best-selling novel, Jaws.
I just found out that a girl got killed here last week. And you knew it. You knew there was a shark out there. You knew it was dangerous, but you let people go swimming anyway. Did you see that?
It's all psychological. You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Is it true that most people get attacked by sharks in 3 feet of water, about 10 feet from the beach? Yeah.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark.
Bad fish. But I'll catch him and kill him.
Did you hear your father? Out of the water now!
This shark, swallow you whole.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
That's a 20-footer.
25. 3 tons of them.
Hurry up!
up. He's coming straight for us. Don't screw it up now.
Don't wait for me! Now! Shoot!
What's he tell you? Give him room!
I can't! He's trying to run! Oh! Cut it quick! I can't hold it! Hurry! Break it up!
Brody!
None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws. Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, Jaws. See it before you go swimming.